You stand over a 7-iron, middle of the fairway, you've done everything right, then you swing. The ball rockets low and left, or it dribbles off the toe, and your playing partner gives you that little nod, the polite one, the one that says, "Tough break." But here's what I found after 2 years of pulling this thread. It wasn't your swing, it was your club. And the most forgiving irons on earth are almost never the ones sitting in the pro shop window, being sold to you as the clubs that will make you better. I couldn't let it go. I kept asking one question. Why do two golfers with the exact same swing get results 100 yards apart? And why does nobody at the counter ever tell you the real answer? So I went digging. Old catalogs, engineering patents, a fitting chart from 1972 that a retired club builder handed me out of a shoebox in his garage. And by the end of this, I'll show you the single cheapest change that made more difference than any $500 iron set I tested. You can do it this weekend with things already sitting in your house. Let me start with the moment that stopped me cold. I was standing in a used club bin at a shop outside Phoenix, holding 2 7-irons. One was a gorgeous, thin, shiny blade, the kind the good players carry. The other was a chunky, ugly thing with a fat back and a hollow cavity carved into it. The blade cost 3 times more. The old man behind the counter watched me weigh them in my hands. Then he said something I've never forgotten. "Son, the pretty one will punish you for being human. The ugly one forgives you." I thought that was just an old-timer being poetic. I was wrong. It turned out to be pure physics, and it was discovered by an electrical engineer who never played golf until he was 42 years old. His name was Karsten Solheim, and in 1959, he was working for General Electric, building television guidance systems, when he picked up a golf club for the first time and hated it. He couldn't understand why the club twisted in his hands every time he missed the center. He was an engineer. He thought about forces and balance for a living, so he took the weight that manufacturers had piled up right behind the ball, and he did the opposite. He pushed it out to the edges, the heel and the toe. He hollowed out the middle. He built the first ones in his garage. His wife heard the sound the ball made off that new putter and said it went ping. That became the name. Now here's the part that matters to you. What Karsten stumbled onto has a real engineering name. Moment of inertia. Everybody in the industry just calls it forgiveness. It's the club's ability to resist twisting when you miss the sweet spot. And here's the number that changed how I look at every iron. On a typical mishit, a high forgiveness iron twists less than half as much as a blade. Same bad swing, half the punishment. That means straighter shots and more distance on the exact swings you already make. Not the perfect one you make once a round. The messy ones you make on the other 17 holes. I tested this myself. I borrowed a launch monitor, hit 50 balls with a blade and 50 with a modern cavity back, and deliberately missed the center on both. The blade shots that caught the toe lost up to 12 yards and drifted right. The forgiving iron on the same miss lost about 4 yards and stayed near my line. I've been playing for 30 years and nobody ever told me that. So the question became obvious. If this was proven in a garage over 60 years ago, why is half the golf world still being sold thin blades that punish them? That's where this stops being about physics and starts being about your wallet. Because somewhere along the way, the golf industry figured out something clever. Forgiveness isn't glamorous, it's not aspirational. Nobody feels like a tour pro holding a chunky, hollow, ugly club. So the marketing machine spent decades attaching your ego to the wrong number. They taught you that better players use thinner clubs, so if you want to be a better player, you should suffer with thinner clubs too. They sold you the struggle and called it a rite of passage. And it cost you. It cost you strokes, it cost you the joy of the game, and for a lot of people I've talked to, it cost them the game entirely. They quit because they thought they were bad. They weren't bad. They were under-equipped and lied to. So I set out to find the 5 most forgiving irons a normal golfer can actually get their hands on. Not the ones with the best commercials. The ones the physics actually backs up. I tested them, I read the patents, and I talked to fitters who have no reason to lie to me. Let me count them down, because number 1 genuinely surprised me, and the thing I found after number 1 surprised me even more. Let me start at number 5. Number 5 is the Wilson Launchpad. And I almost skipped it, because the name sounded like marketing fluff to me, but when I looked at how it was built, I understood what they'd done. They took the forgiveness ideas from a fairway wood and jammed them into an iron shape. Wilson has been making golf clubs since 1914. That's over 100 years of building equipment, and they made the irons that won more major championships than almost any brand in history. So when they decided to build the most forgiving iron they could, they weren't guessing. The launch pad has a hollow body, a very low center of gravity, and a built-in offset that quietly straightens out the slice most amateurs fight their whole lives. That offset gives your hands a fraction of a second more to square the face. It sounds tiny. On the course, it's the difference between the right rough and the middle of the fairway. Here's what I confirmed when I hit it. The ball goes up easily. If you're someone who struggles to get the ball in the air, who hits those low worm burners that never carry the front bunker, this design does the lifting for you. The weight sits so low in the head that the ball climbs almost on its own, and that solved one problem while it opened another one in my head. Because if getting the ball airborne is this easy with the right design, then all those years I spent trying to help the ball up with my hands, flipping my wrists, thinning shots across the green, that was me fighting bad equipment. The club was supposed to do that job. Mine couldn't, so I went looking for the design that fixed the next big miss, and that took me to number 4. Number 4 is the Cobra Air X, and this one is for a specific golfer that the industry has quietly ignored for years, the golfer whose swing has slowed down. Here's a truth nobody at the counter wants to say out loud. If you're past 55, or you've had a shoulder go on you, or you just don't generate the club speed you did at 40, most irons on the shelf are wrong for you. They're too heavy. They're too stiff. They fight your swing instead of helping it. Cobra built the Air X to be radically light, the whole club, lighter head, lighter shaft, lighter grip. And they moved weight toward the heel to help you square the face without straining for it. When I handed this to a friend of mine who's 71 and had all but quit because his shots had gotten so short and weak, he hit 3 in a row that carried farther than anything he'd hit in 5 years. He actually laughed out loud. That sound is why I started this whole investigation, because here's what the lightness does. A slower swing with a lighter club can generate more speed than a faster swing with a club that's too heavy to move. Speed is distance, and the Air X gives it back to the exact people the industry stopped designing for, the people it decided weren't the aspirational market. Number 3 is the Cleveland Launcher XL. But before I tell you why, this next part is for you specifically. The one who's listening to me talk about 5 different iron sets and thinking, this is nice, but I'm not spending $600 and I'm not booking some fancy fitting. This isn't for me. I hear you. I thought the same thing. So here's the technique I promised you. The one that costs almost nothing and that I would rank above buying any new iron on this entire list. Take any iron you already own. Get a dry erase marker or a tube of lipstick or even just some athlete's foot spray powder, anything that leaves a mark. Coat the face of the club, then go hit 10 balls off a mat or the turf. Look at where the marks are. I did this in my own garage into a net, and it was humbling. I'd assumed for years that I hit the center of the face. I didn't. Every single mark was low and toward the toe. Every one. That's why my shots felt dead. That's why they came up short. I wasn't hitting the sweet spot even once, and no club on earth performs when you miss the center that badly. This one test, with a marker you already have in a drawer, tells you more about your ball striking than $100 of lessons, because once you see the pattern, you can fix it. If you're hitting off the toe like I was, you're standing too far from the ball. If you're catching it in the heel, you're too close, or you're lunging. You adjust your setup, you remark the face, and you watch the marks crawl toward the center. I moved half an inch closer to the ball, and my strike pattern tightened up in one afternoon. Free. And that's the exact reason the Cleveland Launcher XL earns number 3. Because Cleveland asked a simple question. What if we make the sweet spot so big that a human being who isn't perfect can actually find it? They built something they call a face that flexes across a much wider area, so the shots you hit off the toe, the way I do, still fly almost like center strikes. They stretch the head longer from heel to toe, which raises that moment of inertia we talked about, that anti-twist number, to one of the highest in the whole game. That made me angry, honestly. because it told me the forgiveness gap isn't an accident, it's a choice about who's worth selling to. And if you want to go even deeper into how that system works and how to beat it, I need to tell you about something I put together. I've spent years collecting exactly this kind of buried, practical knowledge, the physics, the fitting secrets, the things the industry profits from you not knowing, and I organized all of it into a series of digital books. Smart Basics gets you the foundational fixes fast. Deeper Fixes goes into the engineering and the history that the counter guy will never mention. And the full system pulls everything together into a complete picture of how to stop being sold against your own interests on the course. All three are available in the description below, and any one of them will change how you walk into a golf shop for the rest of your life. But now, back to the countdown, because number 3 is where the engineering gets genuinely remarkable, and where I need to stop and talk directly to the person who's thinking about clicking away, so it forgives the exact miss the marker test just exposed in your swing. That's not a coincidence. That's engineering aimed straight at real human error, instead of at some fantasy of a perfect swing you'll never own. And that's where the investigation took a darker turn for me, because I started to realize this technology has existed, in one form or another, for 40 years. The forgiving iron isn't new. So I went back to figure out exactly when they knew. And what happened next practically made me put the research down and walk around the block to cool off. The year was 1982. Karsten Solheim's company released an iron called the Ping Eye 2, and it was so forgiving, so effective for ordinary golfers, that it became one of the best-selling irons in the history of the sport. It had the perimeter weighting, a wide sole, a low center of gravity, everything I'd been describing to you. In 1982, that means the problem was solved before some of you took your first swing. The forgiving iron was sitting right there, proven, popular. And yet for the next 40 years, the aspirational marketing kept steering millions of everyday golfers back toward thin, punishing blades that a tour professional needs and an amateur cannot use. They had the cure and kept selling people the disease because the disease had a better story and a higher price tag on the ego. So who kept forgiveness alive through all of that? A handful of engineers who refused to let it die? Which brings me to number 2, from the company Karsten Solheim built with his own hands. Number 2 is the Ping G430. And I want to be careful here because it would be easy to think I'm just a fan of the founder's story. I'm not. I tested this club against everything, and it earned its place on cold numbers. Ping still does something almost nobody else does with the same discipline. They obsess over the moment of inertia, that anti-twist number, above everything else. The G430 has a face that they engineer to flex like a spring, and they cut a channel behind it so the bottom of the face can bend more freely and launch the ball higher and faster. But the part that matters for you and me is what happens on the bad swing. When I caught the G430 off center, the ball just refused to misbehave. It stayed close to my target line when a blade would have thrown it into the trees. That's the whole promise of forgiveness delivered in one club. It doesn't make your good shots that much better. It makes your bad shots survivable. And survivable bad shots are what turn a score of 95 into a score of 88. There's one more thing Ping does that ties directly into the secret I'm about to give you, and it goes back to that chart the old club builder pulled out of his shoebox. Ping never believed one club fits every body. They built their reputation on fitting the club to the human being. Hold that thought, because it's the key that unlocks everything. But first, number 1. And I'll admit, I resisted this one, because it's the club with the loudest marketing of the bunch, and I distrust loud marketing on principle. I went in wanting to knock it off the list. It wouldn't let me. Number 1 is the Callaway Rogue ST Max, and its newer cousins in the same family. What sets it apart is a piece of technology that honestly felt like cheating when I tested it. Callaway used a computer running through thousands of design versions to shape the face of the iron so that it flexes correctly across a huge area. A human designer working by hand could never test that many shapes in a lifetime. The machine did it in weeks. The result is the most consistent ball speed across the face of any iron I put through the marker test and the launch monitor. Meaning when you hit it high, low, toe, or heel, the ball comes off at a speed shockingly close to a center strike. They also packed a dense metal, tungsten, low and deep in the head to drive the launch up and the forgiveness even higher. When I hit my worst swing of the day, a fat, heavy strike behind the ball, this iron still sent it most of the way to the target. That should be impossible. The club took my mistake and hit it. And for a golfer who's tired of being embarrassed, of that little nod from the playing partner, hiding your mistakes is worth more than any bragging right. So there they are. 5 irons from Wilson, Cobra, Cleveland, Ping, and Callaway that will genuinely make your life on the course easier, all of them built on a principle a garage engineer proved in the 1960s, and the industry buried under ego for 40 years. I could have stopped there. Most videos would. But that shoebox chart kept nagging at me. And when I finally understood what it meant, I realized every single iron I just told you about is only half the answer. Maybe less than half. Here's the secret finale. The thing almost nobody tells you. You can buy the single most forgiving iron ever made, and if one number is wrong, it will still send your ball sideways. That number is the lie angle. It's the angle between the shaft and the ground when the club sits at address. And it is, by a wide margin, the most ignored setting in all of golf. Here's why it matters more than the club itself. If the lie angle is too upright for you, the toe of the club lifts off the ground at impact, and the face points left, and your ball starts left, no matter how perfect your swing was. If it's too flat, the heel lifts, the face points right, and there goes your ball into the right rough. A well-struck shot with the wrong lie angle can miss the target by more than 20 yards on a single iron. And it gets worse with every club, because the longer the iron, the more that error multiplies. Now here's the part that made me sit down. Karsten Solheim knew this in 1972. That was the year Ping released a fitting system built entirely around lie angle. It's called the color code chart. They assign colored dots to different lie angles, and they fit the club to the golfer's actual body and swing, instead of forcing every human being to use the same off-the-shelf angle. 50-some years ago, they told us that the club has to match the person. And the industry mostly ignored it, because it's easier and cheaper to sell you a standard club off a rack than to fit the angle to your body. The fitting doesn't have a flashy commercial. It doesn't feed your ego. It just quietly works, which is exactly the kind of thing that gets buried. So here is what you do this weekend, with what you already own, and it comes straight out of that old fitting method. Get a piece of plywood, or a hard plastic board, or even a strip of the hardest floor you've got, and lay a strip of masking tape across the sole of your iron, the bottom of the club. Now hit down on a firm surface, or hit balls off a lie board if your range has one, and look at where the tape scuffs. If the scuff mark is toward the toe, your lie is too flat for you, and your shots are leaking right. If the scuff is toward the heel, your lie is too upright, and you're pulling everything left. If it's dead center, you're fitted correctly, and your misses are truly your swing. I did this on my own irons, the ones I'd blamed for years, and the tape scuffed hard on the toe of every club. My irons were too flat for me. For about $15, a club fitter bent them to the right angle in 20 minutes. I didn't buy a single new club. My shot straightened out that same week. The old man in Phoenix was right. The club was punishing me for being human, but not the way I thought. It was punishing me for a setting that took 20 minutes and a wrench to fix. A setting Karsten Solheim was trying to give golfers back in 1972. That's the whole case. The forgiving iron was invented in a garage, proven by 1982, and buried under decades of marketing that sold you struggle as status. And the final key, the lie angle, was handed to us in a color-coded chart over 50 years ago, and quietly left out of the conversation because there was no money in telling you the fix was almost free. If you take one thing from all this, let it be this feeling. You are not a bad golfer. You were probably just handed the wrong tools and told the failure was yours to carry. It never was. You just took back the part of this game that somebody profited from you not knowing. You strike me as the kind of person who always suspected the simplest, cheapest answer was the real one, and that somebody had a reason to keep it quiet. You were right. Now do something for me. Go grab an iron out of your bag right now and look at the sole, the bottom of it. Tell me in the comments where the wear is, on the toe or the heel, and I'll tell you which way your ball has been leaking all these years. And tell me this too, are you playing blades right now because someone told you real golfers should? I want to hear it. If you want to keep recovering the practical, buried knowledge that quietly made the game easier before marketing got its hands on it, come along with me. Next time, I'm chasing down the truth about why a modern 7-iron has almost the same loft an old 5-iron used to have, and what that one hidden change has been doing to your distance, your gapping, and your ego for the last 20 years. You're going to want to see who decided that, and why. I'll see you there. Here's the thing, though. Everything I showed you was the overview. Inside the old ways circle, I pick up right where this video stopped. And in there, you can ask me your own question. And a real person, me, answers you myself. You won't be doing this alone. Old ways folks like you are already inside. Just point your phone's camera at the code on the screen, and you can cancel anytime. No risk.